Everybody telling you to cut out carbs, cut out fats, or eliminate your favorite foods is missing the point. I'm here to tell you why these fad diets not only don't work, but also how they distract you from what actually does. By the end of this video, you'll understand why trendy diets like keto and carnivore always fail long term, and exactly which diet is going to help you lose fat and lose weight consistently and sustainably without giving up your favorite foods like pizza, ice cream, or anything else that you can think of. The first thing you have to understand is that despite the buzz around flashy, trendy buzzword diets like keto and carnivore, is that they don't guarantee long-term success at all. In fact, most studies have found that the majority of these flashy diets only result in short-term fat and weight loss. And this typically comes in the form of water. And when it does actually come in the form of real fat mass, it's usually only short-term due to the fact that these trendy diets have you eliminate an entire macronutrient group, which puts you in a severe calorie deficit, which as soon as you stop doing it and go back to your old calorie intake, you gain all of that fat mass back. Just because a diet is popular does not mean that it is effective for everyone. Usually, if a diet gets super popular and a ton of attention, you should actually have some alarms sounding. And how most of these solutions take the market by storm is because of the speed in which they produce results. But what you have to understand is that on the back end of that, the vast majority of diets lead to weight regain. And that's across the board. Any diet that you can think of, chances are it doesn't actually work after 1, 2, or 3 years. So if you are looking at a potential solution, you need to not only look at the results that happen early on, but what is the success rate long term? And once you start looking into that, you'll probably be disappointed in most solutions and most trendy, flashy diets. And something that's worth mentioning here is the fact that the way these diets work is by hyper restriction and hyper elimination, which usually means entire food groups like carbohydrates or like fats. And here's the problem with that. It's an entire nutrient group. You actually need them to survive. So the long-term implications of doing hyper restrictive dieting is not only the fact that you're more likely to gain the weight back, but it's also the fact that you could become nutrient deficient if you do it for a long enough time period. So long-term sustainable fat loss does not come from hyper restriction and hyper elimination. It comes from understanding how to weave a solution into your current lifestyle without completely disrupting it, because that complete disruption is usually what leads to relapse and weight regain. So now you understand how and why popular trendy diets typically fall short. But what actually moves the needle for somebody long-term with weight loss and fat loss? But real quick, before I get into that, if you are a Christian entrepreneur that wants to lose anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds or more working with me and my team directly, just go to the description below. There'll be a link there to book a free fat loss assessment where you'll talk with me or somebody on my team about how we could help you do that. And if you're interested, we are actually going to be launching a school group here in the next few weeks. So if you want to learn more about that, just DM me the word school on either Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. I'll have those links in the description below. There is, always has been, and always will be one way in which somebody loses weight and or fat, and it's a calorie deficit. Now, the problem with these hyper restrictive diets is the fact that yes, they can get you in a calorie deficit, but they typically do it in an over aggressive way that leads to you just being fatigued, exhausted, overwhelmed, frustrated, and just flat out unhappy with what your life looks like when you're eating less than 1,000 calories a day. So when managing calorie intake, it needs to be adapted to your lifestyle and to your needs. Specifically, I recommend doing your basal metabolic rate, and you can find that using any online calorie needs calculator. Plug in a few metrics and it'll spit out a basal metabolic rate, or BMR, and that's the number that you should roll with until you get to your goal body weight. And I'll get to it more in the next section, but achieving this calorie deficit does not require you to eliminate good tasting foods or foods that you enjoy either. It just requires you getting in a calorie deficit. You don't have to take my word for it. Simply focusing on eating the proper amount of calories has allowed us to help nearly 600 men actually get the weight off and keep it off. So I'll just have my editor put a bunch of pictures of people that we have worked with here on the screen and the results that they've experienced, so you know that I know what I'm talking about. So the big thing for you to take away from this idea of what actually moves the fat loss and the weight loss needle is all that matters is whether or not you got into a sustainable calorie deficit, not the name of the diet or which influencer recommends that diet and puts their stamp on it. Now notice that I said it has to be a sustainable calorie deficit. It can't be an over aggressive, too steep of a deficit that you can't actually stick to long term. Now, although you just learned that a calorie deficit is essential to fat loss and weight loss, It won't be sustainable long-term if you believe this one myth. I'm sure you may have even believed this yourself. It's the idea that you can only eat clean foods when you're trying to lose weight and lose fat. This is exactly what my client Mike tried to do, but failed. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that clean foods should be disregarded or not eaten. In fact, I would recommend that you get about 70 to 80% of your calories from clean foods. It's just that only eating clean foods is not sustainable. Myself and my clients all have the opportunity to eat ice cream a couple nights a week or pizza a few times a month, so long as it's done in moderation and accounted for in their calorie total. And this moderation leads to a healthy overall balance. It allows you to still enjoy your favorite foods and not be so miserable on some diet that you're just trying to endure until you get to your goal body weight. And would it be optimal in a lab setting for you to eat 100% clean? Yeah, maybe, but I like to err on the side of what's practical for real human beings with a long-term focus. So instead of only eating clean foods, focus on the quantity of what you're eating. And if you can get 70 to 80% of that quantity of calories to be clean, great. But don't beat yourself up so much about trying to eliminate these foods that you love and enjoy just because somebody on Instagram told you that you're not allowed to have those because they have seed oils and sugars. So what diet should you start that is both sustainable and effective? Before I tell you, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more content like this. But without further ado, the diet that you should choose is one that gets you in a calorie deficit and allows you to sustain it long enough to get to your goal body weight and stay there for the rest of your life. That diet doesn't have a name. It's not flashy. It's not sexy, but it's what will work. It's what I do. It's what the hundreds of men I have worked with have used. And it's what real coaches who work with real people will always recommend. And since we're on the topic of diet, you should check out this video right here where I go into whether or not you should implement cheat days into your diet plan. But after watching this video, you might have an idea of what I talk about there.